everybody! How are you? Thank you everyone for coming, and welcome to my wonderful, sweet, lovely, brilliant friend, Dan. Dan, who are you? What are you? Where are you? How are you? Why are you? Etc. Yeah, I'm gotta say that I have a little bit of a funny story in regards to me being like, you know what, that's fair. Dan invited me on and then accidentally double booked me and said, can you not come on, please? And I was like, oh, all right, that's fair enough. And I was like, who's going to come have me on? And you're like, who was it?
You wouldn't mind, but I had I can't even say his name right now. Lloyd Evans.
Lloyd Evans.
Lloyd Evans, and Lloyd Evans like lives in Croatia and like is busy doing tons of stuff. And it was like I can only get him for this date. It was just one time. I've never done that for anybody else. And I'm so glad if I had to choose somebody, it was you, because you were super understanding about it.
I would have like, okay, you're like, oh, it's Lloyd Evans. I was like, no, you ditch me, please, for the love of God, ditch me. Just go. I was like, I would ditch me for Lloyd Evans.
But yeah, I mean, we did end up getting you back on and stuff, and so
yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that we did that.
Yeah. I didn't notice, but you were still muted. I did. I thought I unclicked you, so you're gonna have oops. You're gonna have to tell me who you are because you know technological difficulties does not like if there's a stream happening with mine and there's no technological difficulties, it is a day to celebrate. So
well. That's all right. I will briefly introduce myself again. My name is Objectively Dan. I am the host of a live call-in show called Truth Wanted, which is produced by the atheist community of Austin. Every week, Fridays at 7 Central, I have a guest on and we take calls and we talk about what people believe and why. We talk about Christianity and atheism and probably all this stuff, the science stuff that you subscribe to Nervardia for, but we also talk about aliens, Bigfoots, and QAnon as well, and I think that's what we're going to be talking about today. Mm-hmm. So I'm very grateful that Nervardia asked me on to be, I guess, the QAnon consultant.
You really are.
I think that's what I'm calling myself.
You really are. So, quick hello to everybody in the chat. Sorry about the dodginess earlier. So, Brainbug, hello, Almost a Doctor. Almost a Doctor is also a person who is an Australian scientist. So if you're into those sexy Australian accents and the sexy Australian brains, go and subscribe to Almost a Doctor. Scarlet DeLion, hello. Giant Butthole, hello again. Mr. Shadow Kitty, yes, deja vu. For the people who have no idea what I'm talking about, there was an issue with the previous stream. Junkshot Library, hello. DOG, they're always amazing. Mr. Bear, is there anybody else? Pinball and Chris Clark, hello. Thank you for letting me know Dan's muted, by the way. Lordship Mayhem, Greyhap Labs. I think that's everyone. If I've missed you, I apologize. Just send me a super chat or at me to yell at me about it. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about a person who got fired. And I'm really hoping this is going to work because OBS is difficult. Even if you do set up OBS just the night before, it's going to ruin your life anyway. Anyway, so this person was fired from their job as a university professor, wasn't he?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, university professor. Mm-hmm.
Because he was doing what?
Well, he was a professor of physics and astronomy, which is interesting. But
which is even worse.
Yeah, which is like, I don't know if that's what I would expect. I think I would have expected like an English professor or something. I don't know why. I don't know if that's a stereotype, but I feel like, if you're an English professor, you probably read a lot more, and maybe you're going to read more, I don't know, kind of out there stuff. But this professor just kind of published this letter, I guess, about his beliefs, I guess. And I don't know the story of like what was going on in the classroom before, or, why exactly, he decided to do this, but he basically published this letter that is probably the scariest thing you could write as a professor from a university. I'll be honest, it's not
especially one from a physics, like a physics professor.
Yeah, and it's not that it has anything to do with weird physics either. It's just like a combination of every conspiracy you've ever heard of, except all being put out by the same person. And like, we'll talk about it, I guess, more as we go into it. But it's a weird read, but also kind of not surprising. It's strange.
It is. Strange. It's very strange. And as soon as I saw it, I was just like, Dan, yoink. I was I need you.
It's funny because the original poster of this tweet, one of the things they point out is, wow, you can definitely see the QAnon links in this. But I actually said in our group chat where we sent this is, I don't see any QAnon specific ties in here. Now, it could be that this person does believe in QAnon. Maybe there's like some like a theme or two in there, but there's, the QAnon movement has very specific language in which it talks about the conspiracies and stuff. And I don't see that same particular language when we read into this that other people might see. So, like I said, we'll talk about it more as we read this together, I guess.
Also, Nerdy Rodent puts a really important thing in the chats. I pressed like for a laugh. It also makes me feel morally superior to those who haven't. Yes, that means you. So don't forget to press like. I was actually, if anybody knows the YouTuber, The Spiffing Brit, and if you're into gamings, you absolutely need to subscribe to this person. He's brilliant. He actually said during a live stream that if you click like during the live stream, it actually apparently hits the algorithm harder. So if you're watching a live stream, or if you see someone that you like who's live streaming, even if you can't watch, just pop over and click the like button for that interaction, boosts the algorithm. So someone just said, did I press the live button? Okay. we are live streaming. Okay.
We're live. We're good.
Okay. I think that's a running joke because I always forget to do that. Okay, so we'll go to the first one. So hopefully this will... No, not that one. That one. Okay. So Do you have the tweet up in front of you, Dan?
I do have the tweet up in front of me.
Awesome.
Yes.
Because you're going to be talking the most, and nobody likes my voice anyway, but I'm going to read it.
That's not true. That's not true. People wouldn't be watching this.
Fair enough. It's just I have a joke that 80% of my followers are only around because of my accent.
Wow.
No, I think you guys have better taste than that. Okay, I'm just going to continue digging this hole for myself, so I'm just going to read.
All right.
Hello, Thor. How are you? Oh, and Notja. Hello. Okay, so this is Thomas E. Brennan, Professor of Physics and Astronomy at Ferris State University. So for the people who aren't American, is Ferris State University an okay university, or?
I've never even heard of Ferris State University, I'll be honest. I'm looking at the news story that was talking about this, and it looks like it might be in Big Rapids, Michigan, or at least around the Michigan area. So it's definitely not like a famous university, or I mean, if it is, I haven't heard of it. So I'm not up to date on my, university culture. So
Fair
maybe
enough.
I'm just not cultured, but yeah, I haven't really heard of it.
All right. So if anyone in the chat can say, can let us know how good Ferris State University is, please let us know. Okay, so November the 23rd, 2020. That is a cursed year.
It sure is.
So, to the Ferris community, the student newspaper, The Torch, recently published a hit piece attempting to smear me as a science denier, racist, and anti-Semite. I am none of these things. This is where it starts.
Like if you see an Arrested Development, like in the narrator voice, like he was.
Pretty much.
And we're about to see why.
The controversy started after I made a few statements at a College of Arts and Science meeting. This controversy started after I made a few statements in a College of Arts and Scientists meeting of faculty and staff about the COVID-19 pandemic. My statements were to the effect that I believe the COVID-19 pandemic is a stunt designed to enslave humanity and strip us of all of our rights and freedoms.
Look, guys, I just made a few statements about how this entire virus pandemic is fake and is stripping us of our human rights. Okay, it wasn't a big deal.
No.
All right?
No.
It's fine. It's a typical Tuesday night with the boys,
Just coming from a scientific point of view, no, he's wrong. He's very, very wrong.
I don't know at this point how, I had a caller earlier this year, like in April, saying that they thought that this virus was a hoax, right? And if it's early on and you don't know anybody that has a, I think it's wrong to believe that, but I guess if you're not savvy in the news, or you just don't know how these things work, okay, I can see the thought process up to that point. In November of 2020, I don't know how you get to there. I just don't know. I guess you have to believe all the other stuff that this guy believes, which we'll talk about here. But yeah, really just, I don't know.
So, you know how you mentioned in that tweet, someone's like, oh my God, the Q Conspiracy language. Is that part of it, or is that just generalized conspiracy?
So, I mean, the COVID pandemic being a stunt is something that is not super clear within the Q universe. Q has never specifically said that the virus isn't real.
Yeah.
They've made allusions that people are taking advantage of the virus situation. And remember, if Q was like a real thing, like a real predictor of things happening, wouldn't they be the first ones to say, hey guys, in 2020 they're going to release this plan about the pandemic and everything's going to happen? There's no Q posts that mention anything like that. In fact, when the flu was really starting to get around, Q was silent about the lockdown situation for a little while, and Q is kind of been notorious in recently in being silent for long periods of time when really major stuff's been happening. Most recently, of course, with the election, although they have been posting again. And I can talk about that later. But yeah, no, so far, nothing specifically Q related. There's a lot of people that say that this is a plan that don't necessarily believe in Q. So, you know.
Yeah. Okay, do you want to keep going? Because
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a super long letter. It's only 3 pages here. So I'll fill out for, I don't know how long you want to go for this, but I'll just comment as I see it.
You'll just comment as you see it. Just interrupt me when you need to
Okay.
Yeah, just throw things at me. Or your computer. It says, I don't believe that the pandemic is a hope. Sorry, I need glasses or better ones. Okay.
You need glasses for your glasses.
Pretty much. Either that or
Yeah.
I need to learn how to speak and read, which is also an important thing if you're a YouTuber.
I've been told, but I've been getting away with it so far.
Yeah. It's just, I don't believe that the pandemic is a hoax. People have died. Well, true. Over 1 million people have died.
Yes.
Worldwide,
Yes.
over 1 million people have died. If you want to go by excess deaths, in America alone, over 300,000 people extra have died this year from COVID-19. Well, maybe not from COVID-19, but 300,000 extra people have died. And it's either going to be directly linked to COVID-19 or linked to the effects that COVID-19 has had. So, for example, people might have died from a heart attack that they would have survived because they were too afraid to call an ambulance to go and get emergency care, for example.
Yes. And I'm actually glad you're pointing. I was just going to say, I'm glad you're pointing this out because this specific point has been used by conspiracy theorists in saying that, these numbers are inflated because of those exact situations you're describing. It's complicated when you have somebody who, maybe has a diabetes diagnosis or a stroke diagnosis and then dies while having, symptoms. Did they die because they had COVID or did they die because of this other stuff? And so they're going to count it as a COVID death if they're comorbid with other things too. And people are saying, they're just using this to say other stuff, and it's just not true. That's not how they're counting.
So the way I feel is that would that person have died if they hadn't got COVID? If the answer is no, that is a COVID death. And I think that's generally how the medical community believes. So people, of course, during this pandemic and what's happened is people have died even without COVID, but has had a direct link because of things such as suicide. Suicide rate has gone up because people are losing their jobs and blah, blah, blah. That person didn't die because they had COVID, but they died because of the effects of COVID had on their life. And we won't know the true death toll for decades when it comes to COVID. So the 1918 flu pandemic, they believe something like a couple of million, I can't remember how many, a couple of million died, but that's really hard to figure out because they also had a war going on at the same time. But now we don't have a war going on at the same time. So we'll probably have much more accurate numbers. I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple of years they're going to be like, okay, in 2020 they're going to say, X amount of people, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being close to 450,000.
They were also, it was a different time. It's harder to keep track of that stuff, but they also had misinformation going around then. For example, you're not using what it sometimes is colloquially called, which is the Spanish influenza. And the reason why people don't call it the Spanish influenza, even though that's what they called it at the time, is because it didn't actually come from Spain.
No.
It was just a rumor. and it's the same reason why we stopped calling it the Wuhan virus, because one, it's a virus that's going to affect lots of people,
Everyone.
and when we put those terms of geography on there, it does put a bias in place that people kind of it cognitively messes some people up. They don't really understand the nature of these viruses and how they work. For example, with the swine flu pandemic, tons and tons and tons of pigs were killed unnecessarily because they believed that these pigs had the virus, even though
It was spread by humans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So naming conventions are really important. That's the lesson from this. Yeah.
If you haven't seen my if why is it racist video that I did, I have you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what? I haven't.
Oh,
sorry.
no, that's fine. That's fine. It is probably, in my opinion, one of my more important videos on my channel. And it talks about the naming conventions that was changed in 2015 after the swine flu pandemic because the scientific community realized that the naming conventions are actually really, really damaging. So one of the things that they said was that you're not supposed to name it after another person because, for example, Asperger's was a person who sent kids off to euthanasia camps during World War II. So that's also naming it after things like occupations. You're not supposed to do that anymore because, for example, if you have miner's lungs, you can get miner's lung by living near a coal mine, for example, even if you've never worked a day in your life. So it delays treatment and things like that. Or tennis elbow, we now call it repetitive strain injury because you can get tennis elbow by doing lots of writing. So so those are some of the things, again, as you said, with the swine flu epidemic. In Egypt alone, over 300,000 pigs were slaughtered. And you might think that why is Egypt, a majority Muslim and Jewish country, having 300,000 pigs? That was because the Coptic Christians own pigs as a source of food and for livestock. And so, of course, this might have turned out being a really a way of like Christian persecution, for example, in Egypt, which is a very big problem over there. So in 2015, there was a convention in the WHO to talk about naming conventions in regards to naming diseases. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but I'm glad we were able to talk about it because, yes, calling it the Chinese virus or the Wuhan flu, even though it's not a fucking flu, that's why it is now considered to be very, very racist to name it after it because it is. Anyway, sorry, we'll continue on. Okay, so people have died, but its severity is being exaggerated by revolutionary leftists in the media and government who never let a good crisis go to waste. Is there anyone?
Yeah. So, do you know where that quote is from?
No, I don't.
So that is a quote from Winston Churchill. So Winston Churchill said this, and what was the context for this? Now I gotta Google this again because I forgot that was in there. But so they were talking about World War II, and what was he saying when he was saying this? I think what it was just taking advantage of situations when, like, for example, here in Austin, they've got a lot of construction done while the COVID stuff's been happening, because at first, like, there was this many people on the roads and stuff, so they were able to fix a lot of potholes and stuff. So I think that was kind of, if I recall correctly, and I should have been more prepared, I apologize, that this is what Winston Churchill was talking about in reference to wartime efforts. But there are conspiracy circles that pick this up and say that this is kind of like sort of a work ethic of the conspiracy left, of the elites, that they want to take advantage of the crisis for whatever nefarious purpose they have, whether it's chip people or I don't know, it depends on your flavor of conspiracy. But that's where that comes from. You'll see that in a couple different conspiracy sources.
Almost a doctor. Thank you very much for your $5 super chat. Lebanon has started turning the elderly away from the hospital because the system can't keep up. That is really, really bad. That's actually quite heartbreaking. Yeah. Someone, Giant Butthole says, I like Dog's idea of calling it the Trump virus. Okay, that's something I'm going to quickly touch on. It is not racist or discriminatory to call it the Trump virus because, one, Trump is not a protected class, and two, he kind of did completely screw up the whole stopping people from, getting care and downplaying the virus and all that stuff. So
he certainly didn't help, did he?
No. So the Trump virus is actually a hell of a lot more accurate than calling it the Wuhan flu. So even though it's not a flu. Okay. So the end result of this hysteria, if unchecked, will be a mandatory vaccine.
Gasp.
Oh God. And also good. No one would be allowed in public places or permitted to buy food in a supermarket unless they present proof of vaccination. Initially, this electronic vaccination certificate will be tied to a person's smartphone, but will soon be in the form of injectable micro or nanotechnology in the vaccine itself. Mm-hmm. Is that a Q thing or?
No. So, like I said, they're like people who believe in Q might also believe in this kind of narrative, but Q that makes the post, hasn't talked about this at any great length, and so that's where I draw this distinction, right? Because the thing about the Q movement is, it's like the Avengers movie of conspiracies. It really ties in all of these communities into a worldwide movement. It is the most popular conspiracy movement in the world, period, at the moment. And there's interesting points in history where we've had conspiracies like Q in certain respects, like creep into political structures and stuff. But with the globalization of the internet, and we have like the information being spread at the rate that we're able to have people simultaneously believing in the same thing and also different things at the same time at different places on Earth. And so it doesn't surprise me again that we're seeing stuff that a Q person might say or a Q believer might also talk about, but it's not a Q specific narrative as far as I'm aware. What this really is talking about, actually, if you want me to go in a bit more detail, the mandatory vaccines, that is this idea that Bill Gates is kind of the arbiter behind a lot of this, because Bill Gates does a lot of work with vaccines and stuff. And a few years ago, he gave a TED talk saying, hey, the world isn't ready for a pandemic and we need to make these changes. And so people are pointing to this and saying, oh, Bill Gates knew ahead of time, and so they want him to get the money for this vaccine and stuff, even though other companies have made a vaccine already, or at least we got one that's going to be rolled out here in some time. And so it's all kind of just nonsense, of course, but that's where this is coming from, I'm pretty sure. I think they're talking more about Bill Gates rather than Q.
Yeah. Okay, so where is it? Okay. So if this comes out so micro or nanotechnology in the vaccine itself, if this comes about, it will truly be a fulfillment in the prophecy of the mark of the beast, as described by St. John of the Apostle in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, 16 to 17. Yeah. So
Yes. Mark of the Beast. Classic. That's classic.
How many times has Mark of the Beast...
Hopefully I don't have to explain the Mark of the Beast.
It has... hopefully not. Does anyone
Yeah.
does anyone not understand what the mark of the beast is? Okay, so I don't think anybody, but basically, if you don't know what it is, because it's best to assume that some people might not. It's basically a mark in the forehead or the right hand, I think, the right palm, saying that if you don't have it, you can't buy or sell things. Is it? Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, and so people were talking.
Yeah. And no, yeah, it's been used for a lot of different things over the years to describe different stuff. The most famous example, I think, well, two really big famous examples was when UPC codes were first made. Little barcodes and stuff. That was called the mark of the beast. Another thing was credit cards. When credit cards were first becoming a thing, people were saying, "Oh, because you swipe with your hand, it's the mark, haha," and it's for commerce. And it comes up every 10 years for whatever technology. So
So okay, in order to distract people's attention away from that and other points I'm trying to make, and to silence me and get me fired, the student newspaper, probably at the behest of leftist professors and administrations here at Ferris, have published a series of articles implying that I'm racist, anti-Semitic, and a science denier. These are the standard mind control spells that leftists cast upon their enemies. Let me try to dispel them. So I just want to say something. This is a term that I often use to Christians, but I also have noticed the same attitude towards people who are more conservative leaning, which is Christian persecution autofellatio. Basically, every time they suffer consequences, they for their actions, they call it persecution because persecution autofellatio.
Pretty much, you got it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wanted to say in regards to that other than?
I don't think when he says these are standard mind control spells that leftists cast upon their enemies, he's talking about literal spells. But honestly, I don't know for sure. That's a 50-50 split right there. He could be talking about actual spells. There is kind of this idea that basically elitists will put the reason why you see secret messages in music videos and things like that is because there's this cosmic kind of law, and that the only way that these workers of Satan or Satan themselves can get you to do something is you have to actually consent to doing it, whether it's killing babies or whatever it is, right? Like you have to agree to it. And so it's kind of like they're putting fine print in a contract. That's what these kind of secret messages are and stuff, is that but I mean, first of all, I don't know how that creates consent amongst anybody if only conspiracy people can read the fine print and nobody else can. But like, this is a theme that you'll see in a lot of different types of work. So that's why I'm saying, like, this letter is really just it's almost like a love letter to conspiracies, honestly. It's like this medley of different stuff, which is why it's really weird that this guy just kind of had it all.
Yeah, he literally does have everything. If you do actually see any specific QAnon conspiracies, just point it out, because you did mention that the tweet that was put out, you're like, the person was like, "Oh, there's Q everywhere," and you're like, not really. So let me know when you specifically see it.
Like I said, there is no Q-specific narratives that I'm aware of in this entire text. Just because there may be some Q people that believe this doesn't mean it's a Q-specific conspiracy, because that involves very specific kind of narratives. This is more kind of general InfoWars watcher kind of conspiracy, which is still tasty. It's still good.
Yeah, it's pretty delicious
to read. But yeah.
Okay, so here he goes. Let me try to dispel him. First point. I have a Twitter account that I use as a hole to shout in. I use the account to test the boundaries of language and ideas, and will sometimes say some things that sound inflammatory or strange. I keep it in a locked, private mode so that only my small number of followers can see my tweets, and I always delete the most controversial ones within a few hours up to a day after typing them. It is my way of poking the dragon. Until now, it's gone unnoticed, but I finally caught the attention of the cancel culture. I knew this would eventually happen, and it's fine that it's happening now as our society is reaching a crescendo of madness.
Now, this is interesting because this is the most substantive thing to really talk about here is it right for a university to fire someone based on a account that's not public, that is a private Twitter account, assuming that this was a private Twitter account, right? Yeah. Like that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. I think that university professors in particular should be able to have their right to say their mind about things, but they're also representatives of a school. And if they don't necessarily share the same values of that school, does the university have a right to fire the professor? I mean, in this case, I think the university was absolutely justified. I wouldn't want anybody that says any of these things teaching, but what if they say something about administration that they're critical of, and they use this kind of as evidence to the point? I don't know, but it's an interesting case. So that's the one kind of kind of thing to this, I guess. Yeah. I don't know what you think, but
I am a big fan of people experiencing consequences to their actions. There is that argument of how far does the leftist woke bullshit, cancel culture go. I have been thinking about doing a video on my opinions around cancel culture, and my personal beliefs around cancel culture is if you cancel someone who, when they accidentally have say something racist, or if they just do a one-off, nobody's perfect. I know I've said racist things or done racist things accidentally in the past, but I do not consider myself a racist person because, and I believe my past actions, if you dig through my, see how I interact with people, you'll notice that I'm not a racist person, even though that makes me sound like I am. But if you accidentally make a racist joke or a sexist joke or something, and you get cancelled for that, okay, that's cancel culture. But if you consistently make racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic statements, then losing your job over that's not cancel culture. That's a company saving their asses for a potential lawsuit in the future. So
sure, yeah, I agree with that. I agree. I think if a university is willing to say here, you have to take these compliance courses and you have to pass the standards that met by this board, and if you can do that, you can continue to teach here. And this is kind of like a demonstration of, yes, I've learned that I can't use these things here, and I understand fully the consequences of when I use this speech. But that's probably something they should be doing for hiring anyway, right? But,
yeah.
I could see. I think that could be a viable solution, because I agree with you. People make mistakes, and especially if we're talking about people from, universities have tons of people from places that aren't the United States, and there can be an adjustment to culture sometimes that people aren't aware of. So I get that, but in this case, yeah, definitely. If I was on that board, I would fire this guy yesterday. I don't know why. It's even it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's another thing is that he's if you refuse to learn. So if somebody goes racist, okay, this is what's happening. This is why you're racist. Blah blah blah, and they're like, no, you're wrong. That's not racist, and then continue saying racist things, you kind of deserve to be cancelled. So I think, again, if you used to be racist and say lots of racist things, and then someone beats you over the head with a truth bat, and you're like, okay, and you learn and you grow, and you no longer say that, and you're genuinely deeply apologetic, then, you don't deserve to be cancelled for things that happened, 15 years ago. A perfect example of that for me is that I used to be against the idea of moving Australia Day, which was basically known by the Indigenous people of Australia as Invasion Day, because that was when the invasion of Australia happened. And I was like, oh no, it's bullshit. And then someone was like, well, how would you feel if you had your culture and your language, and then another, China came in, just using a random nation, China came in and goes, you're not allowed to celebrate things that are important to you. You're not allowed to celebrate Anzac Day. You're not allowed to continue speaking English. You've your entire life and friends and family and way of thinking and living just gets destroyed. You lose your language and everything like that. And then they go, on the day that they invaded, it's now the national day of pride. How would you feel? And I was like, yeah, no, we have to move it. We have to move Australia Day. And I am very, 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 very passionate about that because of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I used to think that if you were gay and you lived together and you were living in sin, that's I was a Christian and that was a belief that I endorsed. I don't hold to that at all. I did a complete 180 for that.
Yeah.
And I had time to grow and do that before anybody ever knew who I was on the internet or anything. I was just a guy. And so if I had to have that transformation while people knew me, even at a public level, like a professor, that's got to be more difficult. And so I think that's why you and I are probably a bit more sensitive to that, because we realize we in the course of our internet career, whatever that is, right? Like we're probably going to change our mind about things, and we would like it if we could be, given some leeway in those cases.
Yeah.
So I think that's why content creators tend to kind of lean that way a little bit, as opposed to maybe people who don't make that content. But at the same time, there is a responsibility with speech. There is a responsibility, and keeping people accountable for what they say isn't a bad thing. And this guy needs something. But let's get back to it.
Let's get back to it. Yeah, this is a conversation we could have for hours. But there's a couple of points that that some people are saying. Hang on, where is it? If they teach falsehoods in the classroom, it's pretty cut and dry. I agree. Thank you, Smitty. That if they go out of their way to teach falsehoods. Thor Rasmussen says, "Aren't we all the same race? We are the same species, and there's no race in us because we are the same species." It's just the same way.
Yeah.
It's just the same way that it's basically hair color. You're brown, I'm darkish black, kind of. We've got the same hair color. Blonde and stuff. It's just a variation of the phenotypes that are being expressed. So no, there's no race because we're the same species. Racism is a social construct.
Yeah. There's no consensus on what hard definitions of who counts in what race or another. It's always going to be a social construct.
Yeah,
absolutely, I agree with that.
And within the next couple of thousand years, there's going to be almost literally no race because we'll have all interbred due to globalization.
Or we'll be dead.
Or we'll be dead. Either way, probably the latter. All right, so okay, so I'm going to go to the next page. So let me address a few of these tweets, starting with the one where I use the N-word. I'm going to say N-word as nincompoop.
Yeah. And this is... And we go from... Remember, this starts with just look, I just said a few things. It's I may have said the N-word on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how you see that as look, this is defensible. Okay, I can make a point with this.
I believe the N-word is a mind control spell designed to make us hate each other. I am not racist against black people. I love and respect them. Does that not sound like I'm not racist, I have a black friend?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, anybody can say this. This is a free phrase that anybody can say because there's nothing that like if you had no idea who I was and I just said that out loud, how are you going to prove me wrong in that instance? You really can't. And that's how this phrase comes up in social situations, right? And of course, you can have people of other races in your life that you're friendly with that you still have racist thought towards. Go to if you've ever been to high school, like you're probably around people who are sitting in classroom with people of other races and also probably think racist thoughts about other races. Like I know I did, where I grew up in Texas. People had stuff to say, so it's like, yeah, like doesn't mean anything, dude. Also, come on, really? On Twitter in 2020. All right. Okay, boomer.
But I reject the premise that there are certain magic words that should never be used in context or by certain people. I uttered the word to try to neutralize its power and its implied meaning in the context of the tweet as a synonym for human being or person, since I used it to describe people of different races. I deleted this tweet within a few hours of typing it back in June in 2019, way before I made the COVID-19 comment, so someone must have screenshotted it and been building a portfolio to use against me for when the time came. There is literally nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, 2019, I forgot. Oh, sorry. 2019 was a different time, you guys.
Yeah.
Like, come on, cut me some slack,
Yeah, just a year ago. Come on, it's totally different.
Yeah, but and this is what I'm saying, I don't know, because if you read that text, he says spell, but I think he's talking about this idea again of just words being used really powerfully in certain ways. I don't know if he actually means real magic, but he definitely could. It's a toss-up. I really don't know.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about that one too. So, yeah, I know it's weird. I am leaning towards he actually believes that it's a mind control spell. I'm leaning towards that, but leaning in 55-45 kind of thing.
I just think it's weird that a physics professor would believe in magic spells. But you know what? It's also weird that he believes everything else here,
yes,
so.
it gets better. Yeah, so uttering the word to try and neutralize its power. Okay, just no. Just no. Just no. We had a conversation.
Has any white person ever said the N-word and somebody thought, "Oh my God, he neutralized its power"?
I doubt it.
Anybody's come to that conclusion. I don't know if that's a thing. Yeah.
Ironically, my casual use of the N-word in that tweet isn't the most controversial thing about it. It's that I'm calling out the huge scientific and historical frauds that I believe have been perpetrated since the mid-20th century. There is real science, but there is also fake science. Now, this is where it starts warming up. It was kind of spicy, but we're talking bell pepper kind of level of spicy. We're getting to jalapenos. Yeah,
matches on that oven.
Yeah, we're going up to jalapenos at the moment. Okay, there is real science and there is also fake science. Fake science is an instrument of oppression. I believe.
Yes.
Oh God, I believe that Bill Nye, Buzz Aldrin, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Anthony Fauci are human beings of worth, as we all are, but I believe they are telling some lies and are part of a system of lies.
Okay, so he mentions Buzz Aldrin. I think that means he might be
a flat
earther.
I'm pretty sure he does.
The moon thing. Actually, no, it's probably the moon thing. But people will say that about the flat Earth too. They will say that Buzz Aldrin lies about going to the moon because of flat Earth.
Have you seen?
Yeah, you're right. It's actually.
Have you seen the video of him punching someone who was a moon who was a denier?
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I have.
Love it.
Yeah. It's. I can understand maybe not being the biggest fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye or whatever. But like, Anthony Fauci's just like trying to make sure we don't all die. Like, I don't understand the hate that man gets as much. I don't know.
How dare he? How dare he?
How dare he? How dare he do his job?
I know. Nerdy wrote it. How can you be a physicist and a flat earther? Excellent question.
I mean, there are physicists that believe, that redshift isn't happening, and that, we're actually all in a creationist universe. I mean, I wouldn't put it out of the question to think that that's a possibility, but yeah, like, I mean, how do you be a physicist and not think the moon landing happened? I don't know. Like, it's all kind of just...
Besides using the N-word, a linguistic atom bomb that I only use to get people's attention, I also said atom bombs are fake. The atom bomb has got to be one of the most fear-inducing, oppressive ideas of all time, and fear is the mind killer. Atom bombs are fake.
I love that he says fear is the mind killer. It's that Dune reference there. But yeah, like, I'll be honest, I have not read before this point any conspiracy theories talking about the atom bombs being fake. But I guess that's a thing, right? It has to be a thing if this guy's talking about it. And I didn't look into it, but I don't know. I guess because it's such a crazy atrocity, people deny it. I think that's how that these things kind of go. But like, I'm pretty sure like entire books and pictures and stories of people who have had radiation from those events like have been written and talked about. Like, I don't know. That's like a really crazy level of denial.
Yeah. But then again, people deny the Holocaust, so
it's true.
Yeah, people lie are able to do some pretty interesting mental gymnastics to get to somewhere. After watching the footage of atomic bomb tests from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, it appears to me they are just films of explosions of large piles of TNT made to look so much better through special effects. By filming an explosion at a high frame rate and playing it back in slow motion, an impression of immensity can be achieved. Because in the 1940s, they had like 1,200 frames per second.
They were doing slow-mo. It was really cool. They just had to rewind it and then just do superimpose some effects. It's how, like, the 1940s is when we got great films like Jurassic Park and The Matrix, where that's when those computer generated effects were really getting started.
They did some really good stuff. And the 1,200 frames per second video was just beautiful.
It's really good. Really good.
Yeah. Other special effects techniques such as front projection, forced perspective, and superimposed images also seem to have been used in some of the footage. A combination of these techniques were used to produce the surprisingly real-looking tornado in the scene in the 1939 film The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, so, which part... Because he mentions a lot of effects there. I guess he means the forced perspective stuff and not, like, the TNT explosion stuff. Like, obviously, this is a time where they were developing like kind of crazy techniques and stuff, but a lot of that was like practical effects and stuff. Like, I don't know if it was like all film trickery, although there was that too. But
almost a doctor goes. Says I've looked into bombs a lot. I like history. I like physics. He can go to the Bikini Atoll and see melted ships from a nuke. That's incredible.
They have stories from, again, like people who have like saw those bombs being tested and like now they're like have cancer all over their bodies. Like, it's awful. It's awful to deny something like that. But.
There's also Vagrant Sam says, and there's artifacts in the Hiroshima Peace Museum. So it's just really amazing that people think that back in the 1940s they had the same technology that we have today. The best special effects were then and are still a military secret. Were only used sparingly in fictional film of the time to define a false frame of what was real on film. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were firebombed and flattened overnight with conventional bombs.
It's just not what the evidence shows.
No.
You know?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
What's
there? It's not true.
It's not true. It's not true, everyone. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were flattened. There is much more to the atom bomb deception, but let me move on. I also said the moon landings are fakes. So he is a lunatic.
Yes, I forgot because I read this a couple days ago, and then we were earlier. Yeah, he does talk about the moon landing. But I just want to point out while we're looking at this that this guy has the wherewithal to, and I guess because he grades papers, you know, he's writing this out, and he's got like MLA format and everything too, which is fantastic. But also like for every new bullet point, even though his writing isn't super clear and he's not making a goddamn lick of sense, he does have the wherewithal to bold his new ideas in like a bold font and like use italics for stuff too. So like, okay, like his Microsoft Word game is on point, you know, beautiful. Which is more than what you can say for a lot of people who run conspiracy theories.
Yeah, that is true.
That's what that college education gets you.
Yeah. Know? Being able to press Control B on your keyboard. Yeah. Perfect.
That's some advanced level wizardry. I mean,
exactly.
It's a magic spell for sure.
Yeah.
That he's got mastered. So.
Almost Doctor also says if it was Firebomb, then why only one creator? I think you meant creator on that one. There is only one creator.
There is only one creator. Absolutely. That's just science.
Yeah. The films of the Apollo moon landings were faked using the same special effects bags of trick that were used to fake the bomb. That's been debunked 500 million times.
No.
Oh, I'm wrong?
Special effects, actually. Special effects. Special effects. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We really wanted to beat the Russians so badly that we had to fake it. That's what it was.
I'm convinced. I'm convinced.
I'm glad.
Where is it? But the most powerful argument for why I believe we did not land on the moon is that the inner solar system is a blast furnace, and the sunlit surface of the moon is over 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Why can't you Americans learn metric? Please, just.
Hey, that Fahrenheit's what got us to the moon. God damn it!
Yeah,
the moon landing that we faked.
Yeah, but also using not metric made you lose the Mars rover, wasn't it?
Fake news.
Fake news.
Not real.
So if someone could convert that for me, that would be amazing.
It's really, really fucking hot.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Almost Doctor goes, my inner physicist and outer is dying. If that's about the Fahrenheit, I agree. So the moon is over some degrees Celsius, not 250 degrees Fahrenheit, which is something, as NASA claims. That is why the moon that is why the moon glows red during a lunar eclipse, not because of refracted red light from the Earth's atmosphere, as Bill Nye and Neil Tyson would have you believe. The shadow of the Earth's atmosphere is blue, not red.
Oh shit.
This person's a physicist.
He's a physicist.
This person's a physicist.
And so, and his reasoning, I don't understand. He says, this is why the moon glows red, not because of refracted light. The shadow of the Earth's atmosphere is blue. So, he's saying there, essentially, the moon is so hot that it literally turns red.
Quick question. Why is it
Yeah.
only red during lunar eclipse? Wouldn't it be red during the entire time?
Because the shadow of Earth's atmosphere is blue,
I
and
know.
so the shadow goes over the moon and makes it not red. This is physics, Nervardia. Come on. Listen, I went to Ferris State University, all right?
All right.
And I know what I'm talking about. All right, my physics professor was very good. He also taught me a lot about the Jewish people, but you know, that was on his private Twitter, so I didn't see all.
Mama Atheist goes, I'm sorry, what the fuck did he say? It's just sort of like weird. Okay, so now that we've discovered that the sunlit surface of the moon is some degrees Celsius, can someone please tell me what 700 degrees Fahrenheit is?
I will type into Google. 200 Fahrenheit in Celsius is 121 Celsius.
That's what? 121
And
degrees
so
Celsius is
and
nothing.
750 Fahrenheit is 398 degrees Celsius.
398 degrees Celsius. Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus. Oh gosh, I don't. Anyway,
We live in a good world. You know that, Nervardia? The world is just really good. No complaints here.
Okay, now I have to address the tweets I made about Jews and the Jewish mafia. So this is when we've gone from jalapenos. What's the next level up?
This is
Bird's eye?
ghost peppers.
Ghost pepper?
This is like, oh yeah, this is like imagine opening up your word processor, Nervardia. Imagine there's people waiting on you to give a response, right? You're a tenured professor at this. Well, I guess he's not tenured because he's not there anymore. You're a professor at this higher education institute, and you grade papers, dozens of papers every week, and you just typed a sentence that says, "Now I have to address the tweets I made about Jews and the Jewish mafia." Like, imagine those letters being typed from your fingers. I cannot. And think, I'm going to write a reasonable defense of this. Like,
The Torch article conveniently didn't mention any of my undeleted tweets showing I support the existence of the State of Israel and I believe the Holocaust was real and not fake. At least he's not a Holocaustist on denial.
well, like, that's the thing too, is you know why people support Israel? It's because they want the fucking end of the world to happen from the Bible prophecies. It's not because they care about Jewish people. It's to fulfill their own narratives. Like, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Okay. The Holocaust was perpetuated against the Jews in order to hijack their nation and take them hostage. Hitler and the Nazis were, well, goodbye monetization. So if anybody wants to send me super chat,
Goodbye,
now's the day.
on YouTube.
That's now the time. Hitler and the Nazis were the means to this end. Hitler was a golem, an evil monster whose rise to power was only happened because he had financial support from global elites in the United States, Great Britain, and other countries. Wasn't he came from a really poor country?
This is what's interesting. Well, Hitler came from Austria.
Yeah, but wasn't he from a poor or middle class? He wasn't a wealthy family, was it?
Yeah, he mostly grew up with his mom, and yeah, it was like working class. You know, he wasn't super. It definitely wasn't a rich kid. You know, but like, what's funny to me about this is, if most people when they're talking about the global elites, they're talking about Jewish people. Like, that's just kind of a code word. But he is making this distinction here that the global elites actually created Hitler as a golem, by the way, which is weird because that's also a Jewish thing, to pit against the Jews. So I guess the global elites and the Jewish people are separate in this thing, which is weird. I never really see that. So usually they're the same thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think he had financial support from global elites in the US, Great Britain, and other countries. I'm fairly sure he didn't have that.
I don't think he did. Not then. Now, the Catholic Church, he did have their support for a bit.
Yes.
So do with that as you will.
Where am I up to? King Edward was infamous for his early support of Hitler, and that's why he abdicated. Henry Ford, Prescott Bush, and international corporations like Bayer and IBM were also supportive of the Nazi regime.
I mean, King Edward did it for a couple of reasons. But like, yeah, like that's the thing that gets put around for a lot of it. Like you hear that kind of stuff. And also IBM was like kind of helping the Nazis like a little bit. Like that's got some history to it. So like there's little bits of truth in when you read these kinds of things, but like it wasn't the same. You know, it's complex, and I don't really feel like getting into it, to be honest with you. But like you can't just take the truth, the grains of truth that come from this, and then make this international conspiracy out of it, because it's not like it's not the same IBM that it was today, you know, where it's this giant large company doing the kinds of things that they were doing, you know. It's a whole thing.
Well, this is kind of goes back to what we were saying before. I mean, if a person who was super racist and homophobic and, you know, blah 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 ended up being like realizing what they did and turned around and apologized and stuff like that, then we don't have any right to cancel them. And I'm pretty sure IBM and Bayer and all of that are like, oops, shit, sorry. Like, people make mistakes. Again, Almost a Doctor. I know I keep bringing back Almost a Doctor oh dear. Chat, can you see us? Oop. Okay, cool.
There we go.
There we go. Can someone in the chat just type something? Anyway, Almost a Doctor says there was some backing from other countries, and the US had problem with fascism, but it was Germany's poor economic situation that helped Hitler a lot. Okay. So yeah, it's true. Germany's poor economic situation that helped Hitler was because they started World War One, and then they were being forced to pay off the debts accumulated due to World War One, which has led to World War Two happening. So yeah. Hello everyone. Sorry about that. Okay, so I do not believe that middle-class Jews are involved in an international conspiracy, only that a small number of their elites are. So are we on to ghost peppers now? We've been ghosts, or are we going up to reapers now?
I mean, this isn't like,
or is that a bit later?
It used to be just all the Jews are in on it, you know, and now, like, I've only seen this in recent years where people are like, oh, it's not all of them, you know, we don't mean the mom and pop store ones, you know, we just mean the global elites and stuff. And like, you know, there's a lot of reasons historically why you do tend to see Jewish people in you know in certain in the movie industry and the banking industry. Like there's historic reasons as to why that is the case. You know, with the banking industry, of course, it's because the Christians weren't allowed to lend money for a while, and so Jewish people didn't have those same kinds of restrictions, and so a lot of Jewish people took up banking. That was like just kind of the thing for a while. And then with the movie industry, what started with the movie industry was a very niche thing that people got into, and it was started by Jewish immigrants. Well, we're talking like not elites. These were people who were trying to find alternative ways of work and kind of started this industry. And of course, when immigrant families first come into countries, they tend to stay with people that they know and stay in groups that they can relate to and connect to. And so this industry was kind of, started by a lot of different Jewish people. And that's why you see that there's kind of that legacy there of different families that still run these companies, just like with any other company. It just so happens that this industry had a lot of Jewish people in it. And so like when you realize that there's explanations for this stuff, suddenly these coincidences of why are all these Jewish people running this stuff? It's like, there's actually historical reasons why. It's not because of some grand conspiracy. And so, and lots of people have written about these phenomena. This isn't something that this isn't a hot take. This is something that's been written about for a while.
It's not considered anti-Italic to talk about the Italian mafia. No one would think you believe all Italians are in the mob if you were to talk about that. So it shouldn't be considered anti-Semitic to talk about a Jewish mafia.
I mean,
that is a good point. Kind of.
Like, in principle, maybe, but like the thing is, there's so much historical prejudice against Jewish people for the exact same things that he's accusing them of.
Yeah,
it's not,
without context. That's actually a good point. In context, bit different.
Yeah, like mafias are real. Like these things, these global elite stuff. That's not. That's a difference. So, yeah,
it's a bit of a difference. Israel and the Jews should not be blamed for the crimes of a small number of mobsters like Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine?
Yeah. Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine
Maxwell.
I can't remember. Yeah. That's also who used paedophile blackmail to control American politicians. I am not an anti-Semite. I love and respect Jews as I do all races, and I pray for Israel just as I pray for America.
Again, so that the end of the world can, commence as the evangelical kind of belief system dictates. So,
yeah. Well, I don't exist anyway, so, that's fine.
Well, you might exist. Your country.
Yeah. Sorry. I keep forgetting that.
That's.
Okay, so I think this is where we've gone to Carolina Reaper levels of spiciness. This last paragraph, I think.
Yeah.
Or the next sentence. The entire world has fallen under the spell of a satanic globalist elite.
Yep.
That's beautiful.
And so this is where I think the original poster thought, this must be QAnon. Because they're saying it's a globalist satanic elite. Okay? And yes, that is a narrative used by QAnon communities. However, this has also been used for a long time. This isn't something that QAnon invented. QAnon does pick up on this thread, but it's not unique to QAnon. And so that's why, again, I reserve my skepticism that this guy is specifically a Q guy. Now, he could have been, being a university professor, been smart enough to know not to directly reveal Q stuff and maybe was giving away some other information. And I could see that being the case too. Maybe he didn't want to kind of reveal his power level, as people put it, right? Didn't want to give away exactly how much he knew. But as of this writing here, I'm not convinced that he is particularly a QAnon supporter. There's nothing in the text that necessitates that he is. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So their end goal is a technocratic one world government where everyone, Jew and Gentile, will be microchipped and tracked 24/7. Hate to break it to you, mate, but there's something called a smartphone. It's already happening.
Yeah, basically.
They use the rhetoric of social justice and cancel culture not to bring about equality, but to smear and silence anyone who opposes them. Yeah, because
Yep.
apparently not being an asshole is a really hard thing to be.
That checks out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I get paid to cancel culture stuff. I get George Soros does give me money for that. In fact, my rates are going to be higher for this stream, by the way, Nervardia. So just letting you know, because you might have to fit some of that bill.
But hang on. How are you getting a bloody check from Soros, and the frigging Illuminati and NASA have not given me one freaking cent to defend the existence of Australia?
Where are they going to send the money to, Nervardia?
I have an
Where?
overseas bank account in Sweden.
In Sweden?
Switzerland. I've got a Swiss bank account, okay? Jeez.
Okay,
Christ.
well, I'm just saying, you have to fill out your employment forms correctly in your W-2s.
I've done that.
I guess I don't know. Actually, I don't know what the Australian equivalent of a W-2 is.
I don't know what
your
a
employment
W-2
forms.
is. Oh.
That's a thing that it doesn't matter. We just I'll cut you part of the check.
Okay, you better. I mean, what? It's like the Illuminati, just running out of money or something? Or?
The only time that I've seen from a YouTube comment section that I've actually been accused of being a shill is when I've talked about flat Earth. Seriously, that is the one time, which is the funniest thing to me.
Where are we? We will all be. This is hard. We will all be equally enslaved if they have their way. They use science, both fake and real, as a weapon to control us and keep us in constant state of fear. Science is liberating. Like a constant state of let's talk about global warming. Sorry, Amanda. Sorry. Climate change. Is that because I saw Mama Atheist is in the chat, and she's a climate scientist, and she hates global warming. It pops out every once in a while. I'm sorry. So climate change, imagine if there was no such thing as a climate scientist and we were just doing what we're doing. How much worse would it be in 100 years' time, where there is significant damage being done? Because I can tell you, as an Australian from last year, waking up for months on end smelling smoke because of the worst fire that we've had in decades, that's terrifying, knowing that you've got friends who could possibly lose their house.
Well, I think, though, Nervardia, that's exactly what they would cite as an example of using fear, because they would say that I'm assuming this is a guy who would say that climate change is one of those fake sciences used to scare people and used to keep people in control. So I think that's what he's talking about, because science does reveal scary things about the world and about who we are as people, that there may be darker sides to us that we might realize, or maybe that the systems of thought that we thought were justified actually weren't, especially when it came to things like what we were talking about earlier with race. Race was used as an oppressive tool in the science of the day, because it was used as a classification schema to rank people into hierarchies, unjust hierarchies that we try not to follow today. But the legacy of that is scientific racism, is that people still pick up on that stuff, and these kinds of clandestine circles where I'm sure this guy runs into, they still pick up on that and use it against people unjustly. So, yeah.
The fear spell of the atom bomb has worn off after all these years, so they had to unleash a new one, COVID-19. Lord, have mercy on me and on us all. Sincerely, because he spelt it wrong. Sincerely?
Oh, yeah, you're right. He did.
Someone pointed that out in the chat. Thomas Brennan.
Sincerely.
Sincerely, Thomas Brennan. I mean, that's just the cherry on a shit cake, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it? And he had his formatting right too and everything. I'm telling you, MLA. If he was a QAnon person, he would have ended this text saying, "Where we go one, we go all," because that is what every Q person uses at the end of all their communications. But that's not present in this at all, and that to me is another. Again, it's an inferential data point because it's the absence of something that we're talking about. It's something I would expect to see, but it's still in combination with the other observation I see. It does lead me to the conclusion that I don't think this guy is Q. At least this isn't enough evidence to support that idea. I think he's just a conspiracy guy. I think he's just been watching too much InfoWars, and going to some weird forums. That's probably what it is.
So what is where we go one, we go all? What's that? Because that's one thing I've been always confused about.
Where we go one, we go all was a sort of tagline that was used in a Q post. So the Q posts, of course, are the posts that the user Q first started making on 4chan and then 8chan, it kind of just became this tagline that other people started picking up on and using it as a Twitter hashtag and stuff like that. There's a couple different taglines like this, the Save the Children stuff is another one that Facebook actually tried to shut down, but they shut down Where We Go, Where We Go, but they couldn't do Save the Children because that was actually the name of an organization and stuff like that. There was some weird stuff there, but yeah, it's just I think it's just Q's way of trying to get Q stuff trending. That's just kind of what it is. And it's this idea that hey, the global elites, they're all coming up against us, and but we're all going to fight this fight together. I know you're not crazy because I'm in this too. That's kind of the idea, I think.
Yeah, I listened to a podcast called Skeptics with a K, and they actually talk a little bit about how the use of language can make everyone look at something that seems really innocuous. Like, everyone wants to save the children. Who doesn't want to save the children? And then once you dig into it, you actually find out that it is it's a problem. It's a dog whistle for QAnon. Because do you want to talk about the Save the Children, and then we can probably wrap it up?
Sure. Well, the Save the Children stuff, I mean, it's funny. There's a weirdly, this specific phenomenon was kind of predicted by another guy a couple of years ago. But it's this idea that, well, if you use children in it, if you talk about saving the children, well, what's so wrong about this? Well, this can't be that bad. And if you just use it as a kind of placator, it doesn't seem like what QAnon is doing is as bad. But really, child trafficking, while obviously a tragedy, is not happening at nearly the levels that QAnon is purporting. And it's not like little babies typically. It's not like small kids, which is what they try to talk about. It's typically teenagers, particularly teenage girls, that get caught up in sex trafficking. And that's the reality of the situation for real child trafficking phenomenon. And while I don't doubt that there are sick people like Jeffrey Epstein who did actually traffic people and who did use his connections to do shady stuff, it's a far cry from saying this Jeffrey Epstein's doing it to every single Democrat in office and all these other people are doing it too. We just don't have the evidence to support that, even if that was true. So that's how this stuff gets spread and gets kind of misinforming for the public. Because if you go to QAnon rallies have happened, and there's interviews of people on the street here, and they're always talking about saving the children. Well, of course we want to save the children, do this and that, and even Donald Trump was talking about well, I don't know what Q is, but I know they want me to help save children, and what did he say? He said and stop pedophiles. Like that's a good thing, right? We all want to stop that, but language is a tricky thing, and it really doesn't have anything to do with it. They're talking about like saving underground mole children and from satanic pedophile rings that don't exist. It's just not real.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Okay, so let's wrap this up. So again, I just want to say quick thank you to everyone who's joined in and had a watch. I hope you enjoyed this. This has actually been quite a lot of fun, despite the absolute bizarre ness of my inability to.
Nervardi, it was probably the satanic global elites making sure that your message wasn't being spread.
Probably not my complete incompetence. So thank you everyone for joining. So a couple of people dropped in throughout the stream, which was I did see Not Your Witness, Maracat, hello, Vagrant Sam, thank you very much for joining. Giant Butthole, Chris Clark, thank you very much for the $5 super chat. Hopefully this isn't defunded. I'm glad I could catch you guys live. And yeah, so if I've missed anyone, I do greatly apologize. Just send me a super chat or tag me and yell at me. So, but again, who are you? What are you? Where are you? How are you? Why are you? All that jazz. Dan. Dan, who are you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I am. My name is Objectively Dan, and I host a show again, Truth Wanted, live Friday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time. It's really cool. Again, Nervardi has been on it. Go check out that episode first. You'll probably like that one. And I'm also on Twitter at Objectively Dan, and I have a Twitch channel that I'm getting started called Objectively Dan as well, so check those out.
And I'll leave links in the description below as well. Please go check out Dan. Let him know that I sent you if you haven't heard of him before. So thank you very much everyone for coming. Thank you especially to Dan for coming, and don't forget, don't give yourself the raw prawn.